Fudge, and welcome to Hangar Talk.
Hi, how's it going?
Doing fantastic. How about yourself?
I'm well, thank you. Nice to meet you again.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. So everybody, this is former Alaska Airlines captain and a former Blue Angel, Captain Larry Packer, also known as Fudge. So let's start with you today, sir. How did you get into aviation?
It's what I always wanted to do. I um, I went to San Diego State University way back when. Uh, I graduated from San Diego State in 1982 and went into the Navy uh, program called AVROC, Aviation Reserve Officer Candidate School.
Oh, okay.
So I got my commission through that program, and then went into flying from there.
Nice.
Yeah, I was very blessed.
That's amazing. And what was that whole process like?
Well, back in those days, so when I was first trying to get 1978, uh, and so in '78, what I did was I went to the recruiters because I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to fly for the Navy, and I went
Oh,
to
yeah.
her and I said, what do I have to do to become a pilot? And they had me take some tests and things like that, and then I actually had to take the test three times because I failed it the first couple of times, and you had to wait 6 months to take it again.
Oh,
But I
Wow.
I was
wow. That
was
sounds hard.
yeah, I wasn't going to give up, and so I ended up getting it on my third try, where I passed the exam with high enough grades that I could be considered for aviation in the Navy, and so I got into the program in 1980.
Mhm.
Uh, Graduated, and the way it worked back then was you would. Um, you would go for 8 weeks between your junior and senior year of college, and you would do all of the physical fitness training. You would do all of the drill training, the marching and those kinds of things. You do a lot of academics on engineering, aerodynamics, military history, all that kind of stuff. And then you'd go back, finish your last year of college, and then you would come back for 6 weeks where you would do mostly um, the um, kind of the hands-on stuff, the Dilbert Dunker, the helicopter dunker, all those kinds of things, getting dragged through the water there in Pensacola Bay. Uh, in a parachute harness, and then learning how to flip over onto your back so that if you're being dragged by a parachute in the open water you wouldn't drown, things like that. A lot of the swim uh, tests, you had to swim a mile in a certain amount of time. I don't remember what the time was, but anyways, you did all that stuff, and then you got your commission, and then you went uh, off to wherever you were going to go. In my case, I was getting ready to go to Pensacola for that first 8 week program, and I got a call from my recruiter. I don't recall his name, but I got a call from him, and he said, "Hey, they have too many people going to officer candidate school right now in Pensacola. Would you be amenable to just waiting and doing it all in one shot after you graduate from college?" And of course, I had no plans for the summer because I thought I was going to have my head shaved and be doing a bunch of push-ups, and so I got the opportunity to stay in San Diego for the summer, and then when I graduated in 1982, then I went right to Pensacola, and I did 14 weeks straight in. AOCS, got my commission. So, and then once you got your commission, I got my commission September 17th of 82, and I had orders to Milton Field, which is just outside of Pensacola, for primary flight training in the
Oh
T-34
yeah, Bilton.
for um, Beechcraft aircraft, two-seat airplane. And I had to report on October 3rd, I remember. And then I think I had my first flight probably October 15th or 16th, something like that. So, and off I went from there.
Damn, that's
Nice.
pretty cool.
I went,
Wow.
I got through primary training, and then was this at the end of the way it worked back then. I'm pretty sure it probably works the same way now, but I'm not positive. It's been 40 years. But what they did was when you got at the end of primary flight training, that's when you selected for whatever branch you were going to, either helicopters, multi-engine, or jets. And I was fortunate enough to garner jets, and so I was assigned to Beeville, Texas, VT 26, flying the T2C Buckeye. The it was again a two-place straight wing uh, jet. So it was the first jet that I flew, and then once you flew that for about 6 months and qualified, and they did carrier qualifications, they did gunnery and things like that, and then formation flying, acrobatics, spin, night flying, cross countries, did a bunch of stuff. Took about 6 months, and then I went into advanced jet training, and in those days advanced jet training was also at Beeville, Texas, uh, where I was stationed in the TA-4J Skyhawk.
Oh,
And then that,
Scooter.
nice.
yeah.
Good
So,
old Scooter.
yeah, my favorite jet of all. It was the neatest jet that I've flown. And then,
What about the Hornet?
well, I like flying the A4 better. The cool. Most of my flight time is in the Hornet. I've got a little over 2,000 hours in the F-18, and I only have 100 hours or so, 80, 90 hours in the TA-4J. But it was just such a cool airplane. The cockpit's really small. It really felt like, people talk about that thing where they go, you put the jet on, you wear a jet, you wear a fighter jet. And that really was that kind of a feel because the cockpit was very, very small. And it didn't have radar, didn't have a bunch of fancy electronic stuff. It had all steam gauges, they call it, or round dials, and it was a really fun airplane. And then you uh, drop bombs with it. You shot bullets with it. You did air-to-air maneuvering, 1v1 and 2v1 type of air combat maneuvering. And then you also took that to the carrier and got carrier qualified in that. And then once you finish that process, that's when you got your wings. So in those days, it took, I showed up at Milton for primary at in September or October of '82, and I got my wings in May of 1984. So almost 2 years for that whole process to take place, and then I selected the A6E Intruder and flew that in Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Oh, out of Oceania.
Oh,
Nice.
At NAS Oceana, and then I did two cruises on the USS Saratoga, and then part of one on USS America, really just workups on the America, and then left that squadron and became an instructor in the A6 42 at Oceana, and then I went to Cecil Field as an instructor in the F-18 because the F-18 was still relatively new,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
and I did that for a year, and then went on to the Blue.
Not the Blue Angels. Nice, nice.
So,
That's amazing.
if you don't mind me asking, how was the application process to get into the team back then? Was it different to what it is now, or were they both similar?
I don't know exactly how they do it now. I'm sure it's very similar, but back then the way it worked was in December, and I know some of the requirements have changed a little bit, but the process probably is basically the same. In December, when the team is just starting out in their training process, because the season goes till mid-November, and then the team takes about a week and a half or so off, spend some time with the family, and then they start practicing again for the next year season. And in December, at some point in time, they send a message out Navy wide to all aviators that says basically, if you're qualified and are interested in becoming a, a pilot for the Blue Angels, this is how you apply. In my day, the requirements were pretty simple. You had to be a regular naval officer. You couldn't be a reservist. I think that's changed now. You can be a reservist now, but you had to be a regular naval officer. You had to be a tactical aviator, meaning you had to fly, either a fighter or an attack type airplane. Because in those days they still had A7s, A6s,
Pretty
um,
much
F
just one of
F
everything.
15s. They even had F4s still back then, and then or they had guys that had flown the F4, I should say. Um, and then you had to be a regular naval officer, a tactical aviator. You had to have at least 1,500 tactical flight hours. You had to be carrier qualified. So you had to really have made a deployment on a carrier. They wanted that experience, and then you had to be a volunteer. Quite simply, for the fact that you were gone in those days. I'm not sure how it is now, but in those days, you were gone about 320 days a year from your family. So it was it could be quite a challenge to keep your home life and uh, work going at the same time. A lot of pressures.
Sounds like it.
Once you apply, then and you met the requirements, then you automatically became an applicant, and you were invited to go to 3 or 4 air shows to meet the team. When I was selected, I didn't know any of the Blue Angels. The thing that makes the Blue Angels unique is that they're the only flight demonstration team where the members of the Blue Angels pick their replacements. The Navy doesn't pick you and send you to the Blue Angels. The Blue Angels pick you and tell the Navy they tell the Navy that this is the person that we want, make it happen. And so, that just knowing that I was selected by such a group of people was incredible. But once you make that out, once you become an applicant, there's about 6 months that you have to make it to 3 or 4 air shows so that they can get to know you. They already know your reputation as a pilot because even though they didn't know me, they knew people that flew with me in my air wing that had gone strikes with me, that had spent time with me on Liberty and all those things. And so they call those people and go, "Hey, tell us about this guy. Is he, what's his reputation?" in the fleet. What because uh, that's another thing about the Blue Angel process for their applicants is they're the only demonstration team that doesn't put you in an F-18 and go, hey, let's see what you got. Show us what kind of a pilot you are, because you are already a carrier aviator, and if you can do that, have a good reputation doing it, they know you're a good pilot. They know that you're competent. And so what they need to know is how how is this person going to be? How is he or she around people? What's their personality? Um, and oh, by the way, do I want to spend every day for the next 2 years with this person? You're with this guy or girl a lot more than you're with your family, and so you want them to be a good fit. And so, obviously, my reputation in the military or in the air wing was good enough that people probably spoke highly of me, and and so you three air shows. They get a chance to know you. While you're at those air shows, you're invited to go to the briefs, to go to the functions that they um, are going to on Friday night, the hangar parties or those kinds of things. And then after about 5 months of doing that, they invite you. They take out of all the applicants that applied, and I can only tell you what it was like back then. There were 93 applicants for 2 slots my year, and they picked 6 of us to come to Pensacola for in mid-July. They do a home show in at Pensacola Beach every July, and they use that time to interview for a week. It's a week-long process of being with the team and their families and all. And uh, so once they kind of get to know you, then they pick the 2 people out of those 6. So then once you're selected, uh, I was you join the team October 1st. This is in my, I don't know what they do now, but you join the team October 1st, and they still have 6 weeks of the show season that they're going through. And so your job is just to keep your mouth shut, speak when you're spoken to, and ask the question, and watch how they live. Watch how they do business for those 6 weeks, so that you can fit in once that show season is over, and you take over and start uh, flying as your position, whether it's in the diamond, whether it's the net, whether it's um, in the solo uh, group. So
Very
pretty,
interesting.
yeah, pretty simple.
Very interesting.
Yeah, that's definitely good advice there. Speak when you're spoken to, and definitely giving the respect to them so you can earn the respect from them.
Well, you have to remember that. So there's the 6 people that are flying, right? They're doing the air shows, and there aren't any stand-ins or anything like that. There's no extra. There's the 6 that do the show, and then there's the narrator. And you have to be very mindful when you're coming onto the team that it's still their year. It's not your team yet, and so you are there as an observer, and you just had to know. You had to be very respectful of their time, because they're doing something that's very unique. They're doing something that's very special. They're doing something that's quite a sacrifice on their home life and their time, and how hard they have to work. And so you really have to give them that respect of just standing back and going, I'm looking forward to becoming a team member, but I understand this is your team and it's not my team yet. Now, once that last show happens mid-November, what the way that they do it is they have a big dinner party. A lot of people are there. They have they announce the team one last time, and then 1 hour later they announce the new team. And once they announce that new team, well then now they're gone and you're there. And out of those six people that are flying that show, three of them are leaving the team, and three of them will be there, uh, that next year. So half the team is half the demo team is leaving every year. So
Wow.
Wow.
That's very
Yeah.
good
So,
advice.
well, they don't really they don't really give it to you as advice. They tell you shut up.
Oh yeah.
so true.
So true.
So,
Easy to know where your place is there.
Oh yeah.
yeah. So when did you find out your position when you got on the team? When did you find out
So
you
the
were going to be
way
number two?
so the way that works is the boss, the number one pilot, the commanding officer. Uh, During that 6 weeks, you're still being watched, and they're he's watching you to see how best you'll fit into the position. And so the way it usually works, and again, I don't know how they do it now. I'm not that close to that are flying now. But the way it worked back then was they're observing you. And so he's looking to see, where he thinks that you're best suited to be. So the new positions will be either the number one, the commanding officer is if he's in his first year as flying as number one, then number two is in his second year. And he or she is training that new flight leader how to fly all the profiles. And then number three is also a first year um, position. So like if the boss is going into his second year, then number two will be in his first year or her first year. And the way that works is he's training number two to train the next boss. Okay. And then that next boss, when he's going into his second year, he's training the new number two to be training the new boss, because it's just always going that way. It's a 2-year tour for all those people. Number three is the left wingman, and the left wingman is learning to be the slot pilot for his or her second year. And so the slot pilot, number four, is in their second year, and they're training number three to take over their position. And they're also the safety observer of the team. And then, of course, you have the two solo pilots, and they are number five is the lead solo. He's in his second year, his or her second year. And then you have number six, that's first year of uh, flying as a solo pilot. And he or she is learning to be a solo. So the way it works is the boss is watching everybody. Now, of course, you have the narrator, right? How does that person fit in? Well, that person narrates for a year, and then they go on to the demo team itself for 2 years. And so typically, the way it works is the boss, if the narrator has done a great job, which they typically do, uh, the boss will kind of go, "You've done a good job. I want to reward you. Do you want to be in the diamond or do you want to be a solo?" And most people want to be solos because they do the maximum performance maneuvering of the airplane. So that's the typical thing. But there's a lot of times that they want to be doing the formation flying because that's kind of the signature of the Blue Angels. That's the close formation flying that we all know about.
Yep.
So it's I don't want to say it's harder flying, but it's more, you're flying difficult formations for the entire time, whereas the solos are, they're doing all the cool, heavy maneuvering and all that stuff, and so that's kind of where it goes. The narrator usually gets the first, I wouldn't say choice, but they get to talk to the boss about it, where they want to go and where the boss thinks they'll fit in, and then um, I was picked as number two because the boss at the time felt that my personality was such that I could be very critical of the new boss, who was going to be Bob Stumpf at the time, uh, in such a way that I was diplomatic about it.
Okay.
It's my personality. I'm not, you know, I'm, um, I don't usually come across as a jerk. So, anyway, so that's how I was picked for that position. So,
Wow, that's interesting.
yeah,
Very.
yeah,
I agree on
stuff
that.
that's going on that not many people know about, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And then kind of walk us through what your first day of winter training was like out at El Centro. You get to the training site. What was that like?
Yeah, so that's really not the very beginning of training for the new year. So you still have, you finish up mid-November, you take that week to week and a half off, or maybe even 2 weeks. Who knows what they do now? But by at least December 1st, you're training for the next year. So that month of December is your marching. Your first steps are learning to march to the airplane in step with other people. It's getting into the air. It's saluting all at the same time. It's getting that stuff down. It's getting in the airplane and learning how to get your canopies to look like they come down at exactly the same time, because it's just basic hydraulics, right? Electrics and hydraulics that are opening and closing the canopies, and not all of them come open and closed at the same rate. And so you have to learn to, when you need to start bringing your canopy down to match everybody else's, or match the boss. Everybody's got to match the boss. And then you take off and you do go out in pairs, and you just fly around turning your smoke on and off, flying formation, and then doing loops. And then right as you come out of the loop, you go into a roll, and you do hundreds of them and all that. And then they slowly get the team together for formation flying, just so you look like the Blue Angels when you fly across the country to get to El Centro. You're not really show ready, but people expect you to look like you're show ready, right? When you
Yep.
come in, you're going to go to Cannon Air Force Base in New Mexico and get gas, say. Uh, those people at Cannon Air Force Base in New Mexico, when the Blue Angels come in to the overhead pattern, they want them to look like the Blue Angels with the smoke on and crisp formation and all that stuff. So all that December is just to get out to El Centro so you look good. And then when you start in uh, on day one in El Centro, that's when really the heavy lifting starts. That's when you go out, uh, and you typically will start off in like uh, the boss and uh, the two wingmen with the slot pilot kind of watching, and they start again loops and rolls, and then they slowly start putting the maneuvers together. The four diamond pilots will go out, do their maneuvers, their parts of the show, and then they'll land, and then the solos will take off, and they go out over the desert to a place, a target area in the desert called Shade Tree, and
Yeah.
they do their flying, and then they come back, and then you fly 2 or 3 times a day, 6 days a week, and
Wow.
and you start putting the show together because you have basically 2.5 months to get it all together before the first show mid March in El Centro. So um, it's hard. You're waking up at 5 a.m. every morning, and you're flying until 5 in the evening. You know, briefing, flying, eating, briefing, flying, eating, all that kind of stuff, and then you go work out, uh, and then they typically go out to dinner, and then if you're a first year person on the team, there's a lot of studying. You
Oh
know how,
yeah.
how to do the maneuvers, how you get a pass down log, and again, I don't know how they do it now, but we didn't have iPads and things like that back then. We had notebooks that were passed down, guys that had flown your maneuver or your position over the years on how they did this roll, how they did this loop, how they did this rejoin, and so you just kept working on it, and you had to make it your own. You had to figure out how they did it, kind of how it would work for you. So a lot of hard work out in the desert. And oh, by the way, your family's not allowed to be with you because
Huh.
because you can't have any distractions.
Oh yeah.
So they typically stay back in Pensacola, and and again, I don't know how they do it now, but back then the families would be in Pensacola so that you could focus on your job for that 2.5 months. It's very intense training, very intense. So
Oh yeah. I would
Yeah.
imagine.
yeah,
And then Colin and I actually had a few questions. He mentioned that you were part of the European tour.
yeah,
Yeah, the 1992 tour when you guys went to Moscow and that.
oh yeah,
What
yeah.
was
Yeah.
that like?
Well, it was a whirlwind, that's for sure. It was an experience I never dreamt I would ever have. You have to remember, so about the times that we were living in back then. It was 1992, like Colin said,
Hmm.
and 1989 is when the Berlin Wall came down.
Oh
That,
yeah.
that's
Oh yeah,
when
yeah, 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 yeah.
Russia broke up. They um, their whole government collapsed, and so they had a thing called perestroika, and they had another thing called glasnost. That I don't exactly remember exactly what those two terms meant, but it was basically perestroika and glasnost was the Soviet Union becoming more amenable to um, having other cultures um, come visit them. You know, so uh, what happened was we went to Russia, we went to Bulgaria, and we went to Romania. Those were the three Eastern Bloc countries that nobody had. Sorry about this. My dogs are going crazy. Quiet, 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 quiet. Knock it off.
Biggest
So
podcast blooper.
yeah, I've got a
It's all
couple of
good, no worries.
Yeah.
got a couple of doodles. They're worthless, but I love them.
Same here.
So anyway, those were the three Eastern Bloc countries that we went to, and nobody had been in those countries since World War II, and so we didn't really know what to expect. Now we went to other countries too. We went to Sweden, we went to Finland, we went to
Ooh.
Spain, England, Italy. Um, yeah, we went all over the place, uh, but. Those countries, no one knew what to expect. And so when we got to Russia, that was the third Eastern Bloc country that we went to. And we spent a week there. It was super interesting because, of course, here we were. U.S. Navy fighter pilots in our prime flying into Russia for the first time a American fighter had flown in there since World War II, and and we're seeing their airplanes come up to meet us as we're crossing the border, and they escort us into the airfield that we were going into, which was a place called Kubinka Airfield, and
Kabinka.
Oh,
it's about 30 kilometers, if I remember correctly, outside of Moscow itself, and the show site was at another field called Tushino, which was a grass field uh, base. So they had helicopters and they had an airplane called an AN-2 Colt, which was a transport aircraft biplane. Those are the only things
ooh.
fly out of the they still fly, but not for Russia. Um, but they were the only things that could take off and land at that field. So, and that's right on the river, right at in Moscow. And so we flew into Kubinka. Su-27s and MiG-29s joined up on our wing, escorted us in, landed. There were thousands of people waiting for us. It was quite a spectacle. We didn't know what to expect, and then, of course, then the next day, uh, we we all actually no, it was that same day, I think. No, it had to be the next day. We flew the Russian MiGs and Sukhois, and they flew in our F-18s. So it was quite a
What?
deal.
That's so
Wow.
cool.
Yeah,
Oh
I
yeah.
flew a MiG-29, and yeah, so quite an
That,
experience.
dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, but it was great, and so uh, because of the um, newness of this relationship between the U.S. and the USSR at that time, it was quite an interesting deal getting to see, because what we saw isn't what you would see in Russia now, any of the modernism. It was still very much breadlines and poverty and thousands of people wearing the same color gray clothes and all that kind of stuff. It was the USSR that you would imagine. It was like Gotham City, really.
Hmm.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Very interesting.
great people though, super nice people, very generous and warm to us. Yeah,
Always a good sign.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about the some of the other countries like you flew in. As you mentioned, you flew in like Bulgaria, Italy, England. But in Italy, I saw you actually got to do like a joint show with the Frecce Tricolori, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, they were great.
How
Uh,
was that like?
oh, they're great guys. They do it a little differently. From what I understood, we would only be on the team for 2 years and then you'd go back to the fleet. Well, they had people on their team that's all they ever did. They were on the Frecce de Tricolore for 10 years, 15.
Oh,
Mhm.
I mean, that's their whole job. Whereas we're in and we're out. And so, but they were very, very skilled pilots. They were very warm to us, and they put on a great show. And that documentary that came out about that time, very accurate, where uh, they have the one scene where they're talking to one of the Frecce de Tricolore guys, and he's like, "Hey, this is a great thing. We should do more and more of this between countries, because it is a great opening for countries to get together." Uh, in that documentary, it's interesting. The U.S. ambassador to the Soviet Union at the time, and I couldn't recall his name if my life depended on it, but he made the comment. He said, "Look, when you send something like this, a unit like the Blue Angels somewhere to another country, they do way more than uh, politicians get done, just because they're bringing a product to the people, not just negotiations between politicians. And and I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. So uh, I can tell you that when we went to Romania, um, you know, when the Blues go anywhere, number one walks in first, then number two, then number three, four, five, and six, seven, eight, on down the line. There's a numerical pecking order. And because I was number two, I was always right at the elbow of Boss Woldridge. And I remember when we got to Romania, we went to Bucharest, landed at the international airport, and the president of the country was there waiting for us,
Oh,
and
wow.
so was the um, so was the Air Force Chief of Staff for Romania, a bunch of other highfalutin. And when we met them after we landed, and the president said, we're really happy to have you here. This is a great thing for Romania and all that kind of stuff. I remember the the Air Force Chief of Staff for Romania. He walked up to Greg Wooldridge, our number one pilot, and he actually started crying. Uh, and he said, "I'll never forget it." He looked at him and he said, "Americans." And he was starting to choke up, and he goes, "Americans, we've waited 50 years for you to come."
What?
It was
You're
crazy.
kidding.
It was like seeing history because he was as the Air Force Chief of Staff. They were under the yoke of the Soviet Union, and this was like for them going, "Hey, the world recognizes us as a separate country. They're sending this amazing demonstration team here." And we were told at the time, because we did the air show in Bucharest on a Tuesday. I don't know why I remember that, but we did it on a Tuesday, and the uh, the leadership from Romania said, we apologize in advance because um, they said if the people don't work on Tuesday, if they decide that they want to come to the show, then they don't eat on Tuesday. They they have to work because they're still trying to get their feet under them on just becoming an independent country. And they said we probably only expect maybe 2 or 3 thousand people that'll show up for this air show because uh, people like to eat. And we were like, that's fine. We don't, we'll do it if 20 people show up. And so when we woke up and we drove out to the air show that day, there were hundreds of thousands of people,
Whoa.
hundreds of thousands of people there to see it.
Even more than expected?
Oh, they were the security. They were overwhelmed. Oh, absolutely
Wow.
overwhelmed because there were so many people there. They had no idea that this many people would show up. Hundreds of thousands.
That's
Hundreds
Yeah,
of
nuts.
thousands. That is
back
very great.
of them. Because it was for them. It was history. For us too. I mean, it was incredible. But for them, it was unbelievable. Yeah, yeah, neat.
Oh yeah, 100% definitely. And then yeah. So what do you think was if you could pick a favorite country that that you specifically visited, what would it be?
The USA. I love the USA.
Oh
But
yeah.
countries
God bless
uh,
America.
Oh yeah. God bless
out of
America.
all those countries, I don't know. I, each one was so unique, so unique. Um, I, Finland was interesting because they have the reputation for being so stoic, and uh, we were we weren't sure like what how it would be. It's like they have the same kind of reputation as people from Maine do, where they're nice people, but they're just very reserved. You know, it's that northeastern, very far northeastern reserved ruggedness that people admire. Well, the Finns are like that, but we found them to be very, very warm and generous and welcoming, and they were just wonderful. Um, Italy was I couldn't pick. They were all such unique um, experiences. It was incredible, incredible.
Wow.
You know,
Awesome.
Very
and of course
interesting.
Russia itself. You know, standing there in Moscow in Red Square for a U.S. naval aviator, and I was just a lieutenant at the time. Um, it was amazing. I mean, obviously, that was a high point of that time, that tour. But I was just so blessed to be there when they did it because they hadn't they hadn't done a tour like that in quite a long time. Well, they'd never done anything like that. They had gone to Europe, but one show and then they're back. They'd gone to Canada, Mexico, those kinds of things. But going to Russia, thought I'd ever go to Bulgaria ever in my life. So
Wow.
that's not unless something bad was happening. So
Very interesting to know about. And then we actually have a
Awesome
question
stories.
from, oh yeah, Aviation Adventures 40 wants to know, what was your most memorable moment when you were with the Blue Angels?
probably that very first air show. You know, um, you you get selected, and I remember uh, in those days they called me on the phone. Uh, I left Pensacola on Friday, and they said, "Hey, we'll call you on Tuesday or Wednesday." So they called me and told me I'd become a Blue Angel, and then as soon as that moment hit, then it's like, oh my gosh, you hit the ground running, and it's training and getting ready for that first air show, and then uh, because that first air show is in El Centro, California, and I'm a native Californian from Los Angeles County. Um, I had probably, God, there were probably 300 people there that came down from my town of Walnut that came to see the show. My best friends, my parents' friends. It was crazy. And I think that moment when I first got in the van, drove out to the airplanes, and when they're lining up, we're lining up to do the march to our airplanes. That first moment, you look out and you saw thousands of people that are there to see you do something very, very special. Um, that was a thrilling moment for me. I mean, that was incredible uh, to do that. So that was probably the most interesting moment. But there's a lot of things too that a lot of people don't realize about the Blue Angels. The Blues in those days, and I'm sure they're still exactly the same now, but I can't vouch for them. The Blues in those days believed that uh, they wanted to get to a town and you get there on a Thursday, unless it's way West Coast. They get there on a Wednesday, but they get there on a Thursday so that on Friday morning, uh, a few of the pilots the flight surgeon, the maintenance officer, some of the officers could go to hospitals. They could go to high schools. They could go to uh, various places to meet people in the community. Um, it was always really special for me because you would go to the burn unit in the pediatric wing of a hospital or the cancer wing of a hospital and meet very, very special kids. And so those were incredibly touching times and something that meant a lot to me. So there were a lot of great moments. It's hard to pick out one particular one, but um, in the flying aspect of flying for the Blues, probably that very first air show was very, very special because my mom and dad are there, of course,
Oh,
watching.
wow.
They're watching me, and obviously they were very proud uh, to have me doing that.
Very amazing. And what did that drop of salute feel like at the end?
The salute, the
Yeah, like your first drop salute at your first public show, like your final drop salute at your first public show.
oh, when it was over,
Yeah.
like you pull up, you shut down the engines, and the canopies come up, and you climb down. Uh, you know, it, the it was a rush because um, it was the culmination of all that hard work, not just of the 3 months leading up to it, but the 10 years that I spent in the Navy working my ass off, trying to be the best pilot that I could, um, because I'd always dreamt of being a Blue Angel pilot my whole life. And so that was amazing. And I remember when you, you know, you you climb down out of your airplane, you step in front of the jet, and your crew chief uh, is standing right behind you, right to the side of you, and then uh, the line comes down, and you join the formation. You stop. Everybody salutes at the same time, shake hands, and then they take you out to the crowd line to meet people, and of course my mom and dad, and my brothers, and my wife, and my kids, and all that. Well, my first son was there. My second son hadn't been born yet. He was born 3 months later. But having my kid there and all, it was incredible. Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Their family must have been very proud.
Mhm.
Very proud. And I'll tell you, I remember thinking, uh, that whole day, I remember thinking, man, I don't deserve this. I just am so thankful to God that I was touched by God to be allowed to do such a thing. And I'll tell you, quite frankly, you would think that you would gain a little bit of arrogance and some self-importance, but becoming a Blue Angel pilot was one of the most humbling things that has ever happened to me because you see how many people uh, work so hard to make it such a good thing, and that when they feel like you are worthy to be there, man, you work hard to be worthy to be there. Hello, Presley. Oh, you pretty girl. Um, so it was humbling, humbling.
Oh, yeah.
Just
100%. I bet that's
yeah.
awesome.
Just a glad to be here moment.
Yeah, yeah. You learned that phrase, right? That's a famous
Oh
Blue
yeah.
Angel.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. Glad to be here.
and it means a
Mhm.
lot to those guys and gals that fly there. And all the maintenance people, because you have to remember those maintenance folks, they are the best of the best.
Oh yeah.
There's only 100 of them. Uh, at least in my day, there was a little under 100, and they have to take care of a C-130 and 12 fighters.
Wow.
I mean, that's a lot of work for 100 folks. Normal squadron's 300 people, so uh, they work hard. But you have to remember, all of them were like six of the year and highly decorated sailors. And it's amazing because they all pitch in to do the work. So you'll see a yeoman, which is somebody that works in the administrative offices. You know, they're the ones that are doing all the paperwork. You'll see them out changing tires on an F-18 because they all pitch in.
Oh yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
You bet. And then
Yeah,
actually, we had a question, if you don't mind.
of course.
Did you see the documentary that came out?
Yeah, you want to know something about that documentary? So, if you noticed, uh, and I don't know how many people really pay that much attention and retain the information off of the credits when they roll on things like that. But if you paid attention, you would notice that the executive producers of that Blue Angel documentary that just came out on IMAX and then Amazon Prime, the executive producers are Greg
Greg
Waldron,
Wooldridge.
Yep.
Rob. So Greg Waldridge you recognize because he was the boss of my team, and he was the boss in that first documentary. But Rob Stone, one of the greatest guys around, he was the producer of that first documentary, The Blue Angels Around the World at the Speed of Sound.
Oh yeah.
And so he and Greg, and really all of us, but he and Greg stayed in very close contact over these past 30 years since the first one came out. And those two came up with the idea of, hey, you know, that first one was the first aviation documentary that ever won what they call a Cable Ace Award. I don't even know if they even have that around anymore, but it was like the Oscars for those kinds of documentaries that came out on A&E, who were the ones that produced, or not produced, but put the money for the first Blue Angel documentary. But Greg and Rob came up with this idea of, we should go and modernize and get the Blue Angels out in front of the public again. It's time for people to see the amazing work ethic of these people in our military. And what better way than show either the Thunderbirds or the Blue Angels or, Navy SEALs or really any of these people. And so they came up and they said, we need to put them out in front of the American public again. And so they brainstormed this and they got all the, um, they, however they did it, they got a hold of, I can't remember the actor's name, but he was in Maverick.
Glenn
Glenn
Powell.
Powell.
Yeah. And he helps bankroll this thing, got it going, and yeah, they did an amazing job. But Rob is a very, very talented and creative person, and the way that they put that new documentary together, I'm just so proud of them. And then the director of the thing, Paul, he it, the three of those guys, they did an incredible job, and they worked awfully hard for many years to get that thing out. So I'm proud of them. They did a great job.
Wow. Yeah, they sure did. I watched it many times. You just can't get over it. It's so phenomenal.
Well, Rob really in that first documentary was cutting edge on the aviation scenes that he filmed, and that was before they had access to these incredible cameras that you can put on helicopters and Lear jets and all these things now that can get right in the middle of a 360-degree uh, cameras and all in the cockpit. But even back then, he was amazing, and it's really incredible to see somebody that's so talented, how he has kept up with the technology of filming aviation scenes. Because I'll tell you, to me, when I watched that second Blue Angel documentary, I'm astounded, and it's hard for me to believe that humans can actually fly so precisely. And I did it, and I still look at that documentary, and I'm amazed. I'm amazed at what these Blue Angel guys can do, and gals.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
how many times have you watched it?
Oh, I probably watched it like not that many, maybe 3 times. You know, people people grab me and force me to narrate these things. You know, everybody wants the inside scoop and all that stuff, and I go, I don't have anything for you. My time was a long time ago, so
Oh
I'm,
yeah,
I'm as thrilled as anybody else to watch these guys do their stuff.
that's
Yeah.
amazing, and that's very phenomenal. And I wanted to say thank you to you again for all
Yeah.
that.
Well, you were worth it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now
Thank
let's
you.
I
move
agree with.
on a little bit. Let's talk about your time with Alaska Airlines. And I actually was at Miramar. I could only go Friday. I had to leave unfortunately, but I saw the video the next couple of days how you got to fly
Yeah.
into the show for your last day. And how was that all coordinated, by the way?
Well, you were there for that.
Uh,
You or
Friday.
oh, you
Not.
Friday. You weren't there Saturday.
Yeah, I wasn't there Saturday, unfortunately.
So about a month before, maybe a month and a half before the air show occurred, I got a call from my boss. I At Alaska Airlines, I was a check airman, and so I did um, training. You know, I was an instructor in the simulator for people doing initial flight training in the 737, and also uh, people coming back for their yearly recurrent training. Uh, and then um, I did most of my flying out of Seattle. And
Oh, okay.
I got a call. And then I also did a check airman at Alaska Airlines. They also not only do simulators, but they also do operational experience flying. So they fly OE trips with people through South. You know, they're either initial training first officers, or they're uh, getting initially trained as a captain. Uh, and so they fly to Southeast Alaska, they fly to Hawaii, and they do lower 48 flying. But so every check airman does both things, OE, and they do sim stuff. And so that's what I was doing. And so I was getting ready to retire. And I retired this last December. And about a month and a half before the Miramar Air Show, I get a call from my big boss there in the training department. Just a great guy named Brian Iyer. And he called and said, "Hey, Alaska Airlines is a sponsor, and not just a little bit, but they're a major sponsor to the Miramar Air Show this year because Alaska Airlines really wants to make a commitment uh, to honor the people that have served our country." And so um, they said, "Hey, what else can we do?" And the air show said, "Well, can you have an airplane fly in as part of the air show? Because that's not something that airlines typically do. That's really not in their um, budgets, right?
Yeah.
So so he called and he said, "Hey, we're gonna fly on Saturday," and he it is really flattering. He said, "We want you to be the captain because of the military service that you gave our country, and also the fact that you've served Alaska Airlines for the last 20 years and you're getting ready to retire. We want to honor you and we want to honor your service at doing this thing." So that's how it all came about. And so they said, uh, "You'll be the captain and you can have whoever you want be your first officer." And so I asked my mentor there at Alaska Airlines. He's a person that he's getting ready to retire this November. His name's Blake Gibson. He's been at Alaska over 30 years. He was
Wow.
he was the first instructor I had on my OE1 when I was brand new to the 737. So he was my training captain the first time I ever flew a 737, and we've been friends ever since because he's a great person. He's a patriot. His father flew um, for the Navy in World War II and flew fighters, and so I asked him to be the first officer, and then my wife, who's a flight attendant at Alaska Airlines, she was allowed to be on the flight in the jump seat, and then his son was allowed to be in the other jump seat in the flight deck, doing these passes at Miramar. So
That's
that's
awesome.
basically how it came about. Um, it's funny, I mean, I know Brian, uh, just a wonderful person, a great gentleman, but you never really think that uh, management knows your name, right? They know you in passing, and for them to single me out and ask me to do such a thing, because it's very special to me honoring people that serve. Uh, I did a lot in the military, and I appreciate the fact that there's people that worked a lot harder than I had to. So I love honoring them.
Yep, that is very amazing and must be a really cool experience. So, when you applied for the airline, did all your hours count basically? Because I know you have to have like over 1,500, and the Navy, if you're a pilot, it can transfer over to count those hours. So, does that count
Oh
for it, or
yeah, yeah. When I retired from the military, um, I had 5,000 hours of fighter time,
wow?
but that's because,
5,000.
well,
Wow.
never I never did a desk job. I was always a pilot, and I was an instructor pilot for most of the time in both Navy and the Air Force. Because I don't know if you knew this, but I was Navy for 17 years, flying the A6, then the F-18, and then I was an Air Force pilot for 6 years, flying the F-16, and then the F.
Wow.
So when I retired, I was flying the F-15, and then um, so that all translates. Yeah, and basically, oh, yeah. So basically, um, those fighter hours, yeah, they count because it's all pilot and command time, and it's all turbine time, right? That's what they.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
And if you're a backseater, do you have to start over?
yeah, you got to get yeah, because it's got to be PIC time. But
Oh, okay, pilot and
there's
command, got
plenty
it.
of backseat guys that have done that. One of the greatest guys I know, a guy named Bob Konzik. He was a backseater, a Rio in one of the F-14 squadrons on my second deployment on board the USS Saratoga CV-60. Um, and we were great friends then. And then he got out of the Navy, got his pilot's license, got hired by Horizon Airlines, and then built his hours there, and then was hired by Northwest Airlines. And they do it. There's a lot of guys that do it.
Okay, interesting, interesting. Awesome.
Yeah.
Now, what is the best aviation advice that you've ever received?
The best aviation advice I've ever received was uh, to assume that everybody you're speaking to on the radio is trying to kill you.
Oh,
When I fly, especially if I'm flying single seat, but when I fly and the controller says, uh, turn left heading 270, descend and maintain 3000, I think about it for a second or two and think, is that the smartest thing that I should be doing? And if I don't think so, I ask them again to make sure that's what they want me to do. So uh, I think it's very important that we have the situational awareness of where should this airplane be going at this time.
interesting. And then, if you can give advice to the next generation of aviators like myself and Colin here, what would it be?
You're going to laugh, but I would say compression socks, because you're going to be a sedentary lifestyle sitting down, and you're young now, but you're going to be old someday,
Oh
and
yeah.
you want to take care of your body. And so uh, good physical fitness regime and compression socks will save your life in your later years. But that's kind of an ancillary answer, and I'm not trying to make a joke out of any of that stuff, because I know that sounds silly. But as far as the best advice I would tell somebody about wanting to be a pilot is, one, never give up, never give up, because it's a hard road to get your license, and it's a hard road to build flight hours and all that stuff. And if you want to become a military aviator, it's it's way tough, right? Because it's all competition. But I would say never give up. And then the other thing I would recommend to somebody that's going through uh, pilot training is get it done as fast as possible, not just for timing, but because you don't want to take 2 weeks between each flight, because then it feels like you're starting over every time you fly. You want to get into a routine where flying is the norm. And so I don't like um, people that have a plan of getting their license over 3 year time frame or something, while they're getting, trying to pay for it piecemeal. I would say get a loan and then get into a pilot program that's your job until you get.
Uh,
So that's my advice.
Okay,
got it, got it.
sounds
That's very
good.
good advice.
Yeah.
That sounds good. I heard a story about the USS Saratoga and two of its F-18s hunting down empty MiG-21s.
So that was uh, oh, let's see, that was early 1985, I think. Um, yeah, uh, I was not there at the time. I think that happened right before I got to the Saratoga, but Yeah, they just had I think it was Libyans that came out, and what they were doing at that time was they would um, challenge the F8 or the F-14s, and then run away. And then this one day they didn't run away, and wasn't a great decision on those two um, MiG pilots, that's for sure.
Oh yeah. Nope.
Yeah, that F-14 was pretty good. They found that out.
Nice.
Yep.
Yep. Awesome. And then anybody else have questions for Fudge over here?
Anyone else? All right, I guess we're gonna wrap this up.
All right.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Fudge, for coming
again,
on, sir.
Fudge.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Um, really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Oh yeah,
Oh, my
it's our
pleasure. Our
pleasure.
pleasure.
All right.
And can't wait to see you at some air shows, hopefully, if you're going to come on out to some shows this year.
Yeah, I hope to. I hope to. All right.
All right.
All right. Take
Take care.
care, sir.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.